Hey everyone, it has been a while since I've posted any urban sketching tutorials. So today we have a time-lapse tutorial for this street scene in Paris based on a reference photo that I have found online. This is going to be a pen, ink, and watercolor sketch with acrylic markers for the details. So I'm using many colors for this sketch: cerulean blue, burnt sienna, transparent pyro orange, yellow ochre, permanent brown, French ultramarine. I think that's it. Yeah, and I added some details with the fine liner Posca markers. So this time-lapse video is actually a condensed version of the full-length tutorial that I have made for my patrons. So if you guys want to check out the full tutorial, which is very long, you can support me on Patreon, and the link is in the video description below. For the tools, I'll be using a Sailor fountain pen with a cross emperor nib, and I will be using this fountain pen as a dip pen. I'll be using platinum carbon ink, which is waterproof when dry. For the paper, I have the Hanamule watercolor selection with different types of paper. More specifically, I will be using the 640 GSM 100% cotton watercolor paper with rough surface. For acrylic markers, I have Ohuhu, and these markers, they have the brush tip. For drawing fine lines, it's easier to use these Posca markers with the 0.7mm tip. It is actually quite difficult to find pens that have opaque inks with such fine tips. So those acrylic markers and pens will be used to add details like this over the watercolor. The reference photo can be downloaded from the link provided in the video description. So this is a rather challenging scene because of the perspective as well as how much details there are. So if you look at the perspective, this is actually a one-point perspective scene, so it would be very helpful to find where the vanishing point is and also where the horizon line is. As usual, for scenes with changing perspective, I go with a pencil draft first. So the main subject for this scene is actually the building in the center, the one with the red and white awning, which is probably from the cafe or restaurant at the ground level. And this building is actually beside a road at the mid-level. So if you look at the steps in the foreground, that's the higher level, and then followed by the mid-level where the pedestrian crossing is, followed by the lower level where the white buildings are. So there are 3 levels for this scene, and we want to try and capture the different levels. So using pencils, I have already blocked out the 3 levels, the buildings on the left and the right, which actually frame the main building here. So this photograph was actually already quite well framed by the photographer. So the reason why I'm using my fountain pen as a dip pen today is because I don't want to fill the ink cartridge with ink because I don't use this pen that often. By using this pen as a dip pen, I can clean it more easily. So once I have the drafting pencil lines up, I will usually just draw the big shapes first. So in this case, you saw me draw the buildings on the left and also on the right. And I try to draw things that are on the left first because I'm right-handed. Now, as you see me sketch, you can see some mistakes. Some of the lines are at the wrong angle. So those are minor mistakes which are quite common when sketching fast. Now, if you have the horizon and the vanishing point on the page, you can use those 2 things to help you draw more accurate perspective. The most important perspective lines are actually the outlines for the buildings, because if you get the main outlines to look accurate, then the perspective for the details will mostly look accurate unless you make mistakes. So here you can see me draw the big shapes and then filling in the details within the smaller and smaller shapes. Now, drawing the steps is very challenging because of the perspective. So when drawing steps, just try and measure the angles first, because sometimes the angles may look like they are going up, but instead they are going down. Some of the angles that look like they are at an angle are actually horizontal. So just stretch out your arm, lock your elbows, and measure the angles with your pen and pencil, and also check the alignment. So now that all the big shapes are up, it's just a matter of spending the time to fill in the details. So this sketch together with the watercolor took me about 2 hours to 2.5 hours to complete, which includes the waiting time for the watercolor to dry. That's usually the amount of time I spend when drawing a big sketch. If I'm drawing this on an A5 size sketchbook, it would probably take me about an hour, because A5 is much smaller than this 9 by 12 inch paper that I'm using. Try to add people in your scene if possible, because that will make your sketch look more lively. And you can draw people who are stationary, who are seated on the steps first, people who are just standing and not moving, and maybe add a few people who are walking, and that would give your sketch this more energetic look and feel. The color that I'm using for the main building is yellow ochre, and for the darker shades I'm adding burnt sienna, and sometimes I add a little bit of new gamboge. For the steps at the bottom, I'm using ultramarine and burnt sienna, but I accidentally added some phthalo blue earlier. But thankfully I was able to cover the mistake with ultramarine. So here you can see I'm using wet on wet techniques. So I'm painting on the wet surface to have the colors blend. Now when you want to paint sharp edges, you have to wait for the paint to dry completely, otherwise the colors will blend. So you want sharp edges where there are details, and soft edges or no edges for big areas such as the road, the steps. They are in this single shade of dark color like cement, asphalt, or the cobblestone. They have the same color, so you can paint all those with this big continuous shape. As I have decided to use white acrylic markers to draw the details for the cafes, such as the tables and chairs, and also the window frames for the windows, I need to paint those areas much darker so that when I use the acrylic markers, I can have enough contrast. And I also need to paint the road much darker so that I can paint the pedestrian crossing in white. Adding details is the fun part because, well, it makes the sketch look alive, and you also know that you are about to complete your sketch. The thing about this particular scene is if the composition is good, you don't actually need to add colors. The drawing or the sketch itself, the scene is going to look great even without colors, thanks to the composition. So that's how I painted the pedestrian crossing with the white brush marker. The building on the right lacks some details, so that's why I'm drawing the bricks. And it looks like this building is a hotel. And this is the completed sketch. So I think it turned out quite well. So we have the main building here, and we have the white building on the side. There is some color that's spilled over, but it's okay, it's a sketch. I like the red, what's that, awning. We have some activity here in the cafe. It's just a suggestion of people and some tables. The iron art is very, how should I say, loose. This one here is not that obvious though. This other street side store. Perhaps I should make this darker later. Okay, I need to add the circular lights here. This is not very obvious because the background is not dark enough. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This sketch took me about 2 hours to complete, not including the trying time, and I'm quite pleased with it. Right, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Bye.